All right, today we're going to be going over step by step, going through team drill 1 and showing you guys how we get through it. So obviously I have my team drill, I've got my calculator, pen, my protractor, my range arm, we have a magic erase marker, our TFT, and a forms book. We have everything we need to get going here, so we'll go ahead and start. All right, so the first thing you're going to come across is your data sheet. I like to go ahead and transfer over my grid just to the top of my plotting board, and then add my 2 zeros at the end to make it a 10-digit grid. I will be using the math method for this, so I need everything to be in a 10-digit grid. All right, a couple things we're missing here. We don't have a mounting azimuth or a direction of fire, but we do have a reefer deflection, so we got to do something there to find that. Let's go ahead and move forward into situation alpha. So here we have our situation alpha. We have a grid mission here. So I'll go ahead and write that down up at the top. 144887. And once again, if you're going to use a math method, you're going to want to turn these into 10-digit grids. So I'll go ahead and tack on the 2 zeros at the end. All right, now I need to find my differences. Take my eastings and find the difference. So 14400 minus 11800, that's my target, minus my MFP. That's going to give me 2600 of a difference. Because my target's easting is greater than my MFP's easting, I know that we're going to be going right. So I'll put an R right next to that 2600 for future memory. Now I'm going to go to my northings. My northing is 89300. The target's northing is 88700. Larger minus smaller is going to give us 600. Because my MFP's northing is greater than the target, that means the target is lower than us or down from us on a map. So I know this is going to be a down shift. Right 2600, down 600. So now we'll go ahead and plot this on the board. I can come over, I'm going to start by making sure I am indexed at an azimuth of 0000, just orientating our map essentially north. We'll be using the pivot point method. So from the pivot point, I need to go right 2600 meters. 500, 1000, 15, 2000, 2500, and 2 more green boxes will put us right there. Now for my little reference mark, I'm going to go down 600. 500 is there. So just hit this black line and go 2 little black boxes and place a plot. This is our target. Once again, using the pivot point method, all I need to do is bring this over the vertical center line, ensuring that plot is nice and centered on it. We can begin pulling our data here. So we can tell that our azimuth for this is 1828. That's our direction of fire, or rather our azimuth to the target. So 1828, we'll just write that down for now. And now that I have that, I can figure out my mounting azimuth. The closest 50 to that is 1850. And going back to our data sheet, we have a reefer deflection of 2800. So we'll go ahead and just in the azimuth space, we'll write 1828. That's our direction of fire slash our mounting azimuth of 1850. And now we can index, or rather put our deflection scale up at the top. So at 1850, I'll go 28, and I'll go left 400 and right 400 from there. All right. So now I'm going to work top to bottom on this initial chart data, filling out everything as I go. My deflection I'm reading is 2822. The range, identify it on the vertical center line, we are at 2675. All right. Now we got to look at what charge that is. I'll go ahead and flip to my charge versus range table. I'll look at roughly 2675 and trace it up until I hit the first charge I can, which is charge 2. So we'll go to charge 2 for this mission. Our azimuth, we wrote down as soon as we got it. Now we got to factor angle T. So our azimuth to the target, 1828, minus the observer's azimuth to the target, 1600, it's going to give us 228. So I determined it to the single digit, but when I record it, I'm going to round that to the nearest 10. Now angle T is not in effect, but if it was, I would send it to the nearest 100 at this time. All right, moving on to our initial fire command. Bringing everything over that we can, we have a section to follow. The shell and fuse that we're shooting first is going to be HE quick, so we're going to give them that little warning right off the way. Mortar to fire, we don't have a mortar to adjust, so this means we're adjusting the whole entire section. So method of fire, 1 round in adjust, 3 rounds prox, and the fire for effect. Now we have our deflection to bring over, 2822. Once again, our charge was already determined as charge 2. So now I can go into the TFT and actually start pulling my data. My elevation for this range, 2675 rather, is going to be 1129. Go over a little bit while I'm still in table D and pull my time of flight, which is 35.1. Now I can go ahead, flip to table E for charge 2, identify the 2675, and get over to the max org, which is 1494 meters. So the section is all going to shoot 1 round for this adjust. That's going to leave us with 4 HE expended at that time. So now we index that observer's direction because we're going to be waiting for our correction to come back. So immediately, as soon as all that's done, just go back to your OT direction, in this case 1600, and stand by for any corrections. The FO comes back and he says add 100. So now I can go up to our plot and place a new plot, 2 green boxes above my last one. It's also the fire for effect. So we know this is going to be our final plot. We can erase that other one just to help keep the board tidy and not get confused. All right, to pull data, all we need to do is bring that over the vertical center line and read the data that follows. Chart deflection, we have 2831. 2831. Our range, reading it right off the vertical center line, I'm going to say 2750. So now we're in the fire for effect stage. We can go ahead and let them know as such. Mortar to fire, we were adjusting with the section. Now we're shooting a section again. We don't need to say section again. Method of fire, this did change. So we're going to write 3 rounds of prox. Then we'll bring over our deflection, 2831. What charge is it? Did it change? It did not, so we're going to leave that blank. And then we'll pull the corresponding elevation for our new range of 2750. So your TFT, find your range, and that's going to give us an elevation of 1110. So we have 3 rounds of prox out of 4 guns, since we're shooting a section. That's 12 for this iteration, plus the 4 from earlier. That leaves us with 16 HE expended. At this time, the FO comes back, says end mission, estimated 15 casualties, and now we can go ahead and move on, update the data sheet if you're following along with data sheets, or move on to the next mission within this team drill. All right, now we have our situation Alpha 1. Situation is before you continue to move, another FL calls for fire. So he's giving us a shift mission here. First step in the shift mission, always remember the golden rule OT direction before making your correction. So in this case, our OT direction is 2000. I will index that on my plotting board and then make the shifts that he gives us from our previous point, which is Bravo Bravo 1001. So from there, you can either use your range arm protractor or just eyeball it. He wants us to go right 200. And then he wants us to add 200. So go ahead and make that adjustment and place a plot. Circle it for now. And we just need to bring it over the vertical center line to be in line with our pivot point, which in this case is our MFP. All right, working top to bottom. Our FDC order, we have section. Number 2 guns adjusting with 1 round of HE quick. And for the fire for effect, we'll have 2 rounds when ready. I can look at my deflection now. I have 2750. Now I can look for my range. Look at the vertical center line, follow the numbers up. This one is sitting at 2925. Now it's asking for a charge. We looked at we're shooting HE quick. We know we have the M821, so we'll go ahead into our charge versus range, locate the correct round type that we'll be shooting. 2925, go straight up. Charge 2 is what we're going to be shooting. So go into charge 2 at table D. Find 2925. And it's charge 2. All right, our azimuth is at 1900. Now it's asking us to calculate angle T. We take the difference of between the OT direction and our azimuth. So 2000 minus 1900. It's going to give us 100. Angle T is not in effect, but we will record it. All right, on to the initial fire command. Mortar to follow, just bring it over. The section. Shell and fuse, HE quick is what we're shooting right away. Mortar to fire, we have 2 gun here. So I gotta say number 2. Method of fire. We have 1 round in the adjust, 2 rounds in the fire for effect. So that's exactly what we'll say. Our deflection, bring it over from the chart, 2750. Our charge is charge 2. And now we can pull the required information. So in the TFT, charge 2 for 2925, which is our range, we get an elevation of 1062. While I'm in table D, I can just move over and grab my time of flight. In this case, 33.9 seconds. Then we'll look for table E so that we can find our max ord. For 2925, the max order this round is 1397. After all this, we had number 2 gun shoot 1 round because we're still in adjust. So it's going to be 1 HE expended. We go back to the golden rule of OT direction for correction. So always get back to your OT and stand by for your subsequent adjustment. In this case, he says right 70, add 100. So go back up to our plotting board, and we will use the protractor to make it a little more fine. So right 70. What I'm doing here is just using the scale on this protractor to help refine and guide my placement of that plot. So now that I went the right 70, I need to add 100. And place my plot. Now that I have my correction plotted, I'll bring it back over the vertical center line. And begin pulling my chart data. My deflection that I have here is 2723. The range that I have here is 3000. We're not in the fire for effect phase yet, so no change in order to fire, no change in method of fire. Our deflection will just bring over, so 2723. The charge does not change. We're still in charge 2 here. So we just got to pull the corresponding elevation. For 3000 at charge 2, that elevation is 1038. And that will be 2 rounds of HE shot after that's fired. So we computed that, sent it to the guns. Now we're going to go back to our OT direction and stand by for any correction that the FO may have. FO comes back, he says drop 50, fire for effect. Verify that we're at our OT. Make the plot. And place it over the vertical center line. Chart deflection I'm pulling here is 2726. The range I have is 2950. The mortar to fire, now that we're in the fire for effect phase, is going to change to section. The method of fire is also going to change to 2 rounds of our HE quick. Our deflection we can bring over, so 2726. The charge does not change. We're still in charge 2 with 2950. So we just got to pull the corresponding elevation. And that is 1054. 2 rounds out of 4 guns. That's 8 rounds there. Add that to the 2 we had before. That leaves us with 10 HE shot by the end of that mission. Now the FO comes back. He says end of mission. We know we can go ahead and haul across our targets now and save them for future use. But he also adds number 3 gun, left 20. He saw that the sheaf wasn't looking all right, and 3 gun needed to go left 20 meters in order for that to look pretty. So with that information, we're going to enter our deflection conversion table. Since we're using an observed firing chart, we will use our chart range. There's no change yet anyway, so that makes it simple. At 2950, we have to round that to the nearest 1,000, or 100 rather. This rounds up to 3,000. So that gives us our row to go off here at 3,000. And then they want us to go 20. So at the top we'll go 20 and 3,000 where the 2 intersect. That's how many meters rather. That's the mil change that will get that amount of meters, essentially. At 3,000 meters, if I want to move 20 meters, I need to apply a 7 mil change, is what that means. So how do we apply that? We know it's 7 mils. The last deflection they shot was 2726. Here's 3 gun, and we want them to go left. The rule with deflections is always left add, right subtract. So if we want them to go left, we must add the 7 mils to the 2726. So add those 2 together, and that puts us at 2732. You're going to tell them, hey, number 3 gun, do not fire. Deflection, 2732. That's going to point their cannon to where they should have been pointing in order to make the sheaf look good. At this point, you will tell the section to refer the last hit data, which was 2726. Then you can have them realign their aiming posts. At this point, we are done with this mission. We can go ahead and push forward to the next one. All right, now we're moving into situation Bravo. We are given a computer record, correction, a data sheet, as well as our left and right limits and our minimum and maximum range. So the first thing we're gonna have to do is come over here and determine what our MCS data is. That way we can pull our direction of fire and our mounting azimuth, which is missing from our data sheet. It gives us that our left limit azimuth is going to be 0830, and that our right limit azimuth is 1830. It gives us a minimum range of 1800 and a maximum range of 5,000. All right, so let's start with our azimuths here. What we're going to do is we're going to find the difference between the two. So we'll take our right limit, 1830, subtract our left limit of 0830, and that'll give us a difference of 1,000. We can then divide that by 2 to get 500, and then either add to the left limit or subtract from the right limit. In this case, I'll just add it to the left limit, and that's going to give me 1330. That is our direction of fire. We'll run that to the nearest 50 to get 1350, and that becomes our mounting azimuth. So then we can come over to our data sheet and put that in the azimuth spot. We'll put 1330 for our DOF, and then a slash, and 1350 for our mounting azimuth. All right, now let's look at our minimum and maximum range. All we need to do is add the two together, 1800 plus 5,000. That's going to give us 6,800. We can divide that by 2, and we'll get 3,400 meters. What this means is at a direction of 1330 and 3,400 meters out from us will be the center of our sector. Now, notice that 3,400 meters is greater than 2,900. Therefore, we cannot use the pivot point method. We'll have to drop below the pivot point. So let's go ahead and get our board set up. We'll start by indexing our direction of fire, 1330. And then we can drop down 2,000 from the pivot point and over 500. Place a plot. And that is your MFP. Now along that azimuth, at 3,400 meters away from you, is your mark center sector. So we'll go ahead and plot that on the board now. Using a straight edge or counting boxes, you can go up from your MFP at 3,400 and place your dot. Since you're only going to fire a round at it and it's just a reference, you can go ahead and hollow cross it right away. And now we need to put our reefer deflection scale up at the top. It gives us that our reefer deflection is 0,700, and we have our mounting azimuth at 1350, so we'll go ahead and index that. 0,700. Go 400 to the left and 400 to the right. Bring that MCS back parallel with our MFP. You'll notice along that direction of fire, we are nice and parallel. And now we can move on to actually computing this mission. So here we have our mark center sector. We let him know, prepare to observe our mark center sector. We have number 2 gun firing 1 round of red FOSS when ready. So let's go ahead and pull our chart data. We already determined, without even looking at our board, what our azimuth to this target was. And that was 1330. Additionally, we also already determined what our range was. That was 3,400. So now we'll pull our deflection. At an azimuth of 1330, our deflection is 0,720. Now let's look for our charge. We notice that it is red FOSS, so we'll go to our charge versus range, find the red FOSS, and that'll get us to charge 3 at a range of 3,400. Moving on to our initial fire command, we have the mortar to follow as number 2 gun. Shell infuses red phos. Method of fire, he's just going to shoot 1 round. And then we'll give him the deflection we got. We know it's going to be charge 3. And to pull the rest of the data, we'll go to our TFT. Charge 3 for red phos table D is an elevation of 1069 for our range. Now additionally, since you're working with red phos, you're going to have a time setting. So 36.6. Come over and pull your time of flight while you're still in table D. And then you can move to table E to get your max ord. In this case, 1705 meters. We give that data to 2 gun. They shoot 1 round of red phos. We can record that and circle it. FO comes back, says round observed, and that is all for situation Bravo. Now we can move on to the next mission. All right, now moving on to situation Bravo 1. Victor 38 calls up and gives us a shift from our mark center sector. OT direction is 150. He wants us to go right 200 and add 300. So the first thing we got to do is go ahead and index our OT direction of 1450. So we're at 1450. We'll be shifting from our mark center sector. So now I'll just apply the corrections he gave us. He wants us to go right 200. And he wants us to add 300. Once I place that plot, I can give it a circle to denote that we are adjusting fire, and this is our first plot. Now, we need to bring this plot, this new plot, directly in line with our MFP, ensuring that it is on the top half of the board. So we'll go ahead, line it up the best we can. And now we can start looking at our data. Checking out the FTC order for this anti-take weapon, we're going to use section to fire for effect. Number 2 guns adjusting with 1 round of HE quick, and we'll have 2 rounds in the fire for effect when we're ready. Moving over to our initial chart data, the deflection I'm reading here is 0656. Now I can pull my chart range. Grab my range arm or count my boxes, whichever you prefer. I'm pulling a range of 3675. So 3675. We'll check our azimuth while we're up here. I have 1394. And we'll determine our charge. Since we're firing HE quick, and come over to our charge versus range. Looking at the M821, because that was given to us in the data sheet. And I can see that 3675 is not going to be hit by charge 2, but it can by charge 3. So that's where we'll flip in our TFT. We get our charge 3, find our 3675, get the corresponding elevation of 1121. While in table D, I'll pull my time of flight, 41.5. And then I'll flip to table E and get my max ord. At 3,400 meters, correction, 3675 meters, we are at 2081. All right, back to our initial chart data. We see that we have an OT direction, and we also have our azimuth, so now we have to find our angle T. We'll take the larger minus the smaller, in this case OT direction minus our azimuth to the target. So 1450 minus 1394. And that gives us 56. We determined it to the penny, but when we write it down here, we're going to record it to the dime or to the nearest 10. So angle T, when we record it, will be 60, even though we determined it to 56. Angle T is not in effect, so we do not need to send that to the observer. All right, moving to the initial fire command. Mortar to follow, section. Shell and fuse, we're using HE quick. Mortar to fire, 2 guns adjusting, so number 2. And we're gonna have 1 round in the adjust, 2 rounds in the fire for effect. The deflection that we got was 0.656, and the charge was charge 3. We send that data to the guns, and 2 gun fires, 1 HE. Now we're gonna be waiting for a correction, so automatically we'll index that OT direction, because we'll always go to OT direction before we make our correction. The FO comes back, he says, drop 100, fire for effect. So that's exactly what we'll do. We'll come up here, we'll drop 100, ensuring that we're still indexed at that OT direction. We'll place a plot. And since we're in the fire for effect phase, we can actually haul across that plot. Now we can go ahead and bring that parallel with our MFP. And read our chart data. For our deflection, we have 0.657. And for our range, we'll pull out our range arm. I'm pulling 3.575. Now, since we're in the fire for effect, our mortar to fire is going to change. We're now going to be firing a section with 2 rounds. We'll bring over our deflection of 0.657. Now for this range, we already determined it's still going to be in charge 3, so we don't have to put anything there. And we'll just find the corresponding elevation in our charge book. For 3.575, it's going to be 1139. 4 guns shoot 2 rounds each. That's 8 rounds here, plus the 1 round from there. That leaves us with 9 HE expended. FL comes back, says into mission, estimated 10% casualties, and we are complete with that mission. We're good to move on to the next one. All right, moving on to situation Charlie. We get a call for fire from Victor 38, and he says that it's a grid mission, fire for effect. Our grid is 150914. So instead of pulling out a map, getting a distance and direction that way, I'm going to use the math method. So our target grid is 150914. And with the math method, you always have to make sure you turn those into 10-digit grids. So I'll tack on 2 zeros at the end. Our MFP grid, we can flip back to our data sheet and see that our grid is 108902. Let's again turn that into 10-digit grid format. And now we have to find our differences. We'll take the larger minus the smaller, target minus MFP in this case. And that's going to give us a shift of 4200. Since our target easting is greater than our MFP easting, it's going to go right. That's a right 4200. Now we look at our northings. Our target easting is greater, so 91400 minus our MFP easting of 90200. That's going to give us a difference of 1200. Since the target northing is greater than our MFP, we're going to go up. So we have our right 4200, up 1200, not 12,000. And now we can go to our plotting board. When using this math method, you always have to remember to index 0 before you make your shifts. And now we can just apply those from our MFP. So we need to go right 4200. I'll use my range arm to help me. Line it up with my MFP at the 0, and go ahead and move over, make a little reference line at 42. From there, I can go up 1200. Once again, making sure my range arm is nice and parallel with the lines going up. Go up to 1200 and place a small plot. Since it's a fire for effect, I'm going to haul across it, and we'll just save that target for if we need it in the future. All right, at this point, we can parallel plot that right over our MFP. So move it over, get the two perfectly aligned, and then we can go to our computer's record. So looking at this, we have an ammo point, and they're requesting red phos in the fire for effect. So we have the section firing, no adjusting gun, because keep in mind it's a fire for effect. Using red phos, 5 rounds when ready. We'll come up here and pull our deflection. In this case, I'm getting 0738. And then for my range, I'll pull out my range arm. I'm getting a range of 4375. Pull my azimuth real quick, 1312. And now I can calculate angle T. The only thing is we don't have an OT direction, so we actually don't need to for this mission. Now looking at my charge, remember that we're in red phos. At a range of 4375, I will go to my charge versus range tables. I will see which one is the lowest charge we can shoot at that, and then turn over into our TFT to that charge. In this case, charge 4 is the lowest charge that we can hit it on, so we'll go with charge 4. Looking in that TFT, we go to 4375 in range. And the elevation that we're going to pull for that is 1038. While I'm in table D, I can just go over, get a time of flight of 43.9, then flip to table E so I can grab my max ord. Just 2102. Now with red phos, there's something that you got to remember always as well, is this time setting here. So back in table D, we have a time setting that will be in column 3. So for 4375, we have 40.5. And a little way to check yourself here is just to make sure that your time setting is always lower or equal to your time of flight. Obviously, you want it to open in the air rather than once it's buried in the ground. So if you ever run into a situation where your time setting is greater than your time of flight, you probably mix them up or just pulled the wrong one. All right, now we have the pertinent information we need to go ahead and fill out our initial fire command. Order to follow is the section. They're shooting red phos, 5 rounds for the method of fire. Pull over our deflection, 0738. We have charge 4. And then our elevation and time setting, we already found our max order time of flight, so we just need to record how many rounds we're expending in this fire for effect. We have the section firing, so 4 guns, 5 rounds, that is 20 red phos. At this point, we can move on from situation C and update our data sheet if necessary. All right, getting into situation Delta, we have here Victor 38 calls up and adjusts fire. He calls a polar. He gives us an OT direction and a distance and says he has a radar unit. The only problem is we do not have our FO's location plotted. In order to conduct a polar mission, we need that FO's location, a distance and a direction from that FO. So now we need to find the FO's location. They give us an azimuth of which he sees the marked center sector and an azimuth of which he sees Bravo Bravo 1004. So now we're going to get into how we conduct that. We're going to use resection to find this FO. It says he could see the marked center sector at 2360. So I will index an azimuth of 2360. Find my MCS, and then I will drop down parallel with that plot a straight line all the way to the bottom of the board. From the MCS, go down, and now I've made my line for the marked center sector. He can also see Bravo Bravo 1004 at 1930 mils. So I'll index 1930. And then I'll do the exact same thing from Bravo Bravo 1004. Now when you do that, you're going to notice they intersect at a certain spot, and that means that's your FO's location. So you can place a little dot. Before I go ahead and refine that plot, I like to erase the lines around it. I'm not going to need those anymore. You can get rid of those. Once I have my FOs plotted, I can go ahead and draw a triangle around it, the symbol for an FO, and add his observer ID to the right. If he had an altitude, we'd put it there, but in this case, we don't have one, so we will continue with this mission. He says he sees that radar unit at a direction of 1740 and a distance of 1100. So we'll go ahead and index that OT direction of 1740. And we'll go 1100 meters straight up from the FO. Circle that, place a 1 next to it to denote that's our first shot. And then we can parallel plot that above the mortars. Get it directly in line with your MFP. All right, now before we do anything, we'll take a look at the FDC order. We have a section, firing in the fire for effect. Number 2 gun is adjusting with 1 round. And notice we have a sheaf correction here. We want to converge on 2 gun. That'll be important later. Now they're firing HE quick and 2 rounds on fire for effect when ready. And now we're ready to put our chart data down. We'll start with our deflection. I'm pulling 0932. And for that azimuth, since I just read the deflection, I'm getting 1118. I'll take out my range arm. I'll go ahead and measure a straight line from the MFP to the target. And I get 3750. All right, from here, I'll look down here at the bottom section. They gave me an OT direction, and we have our azimuth. So I'll just go ahead and real quick determine angle T. If that target is at 100 correction, that target is at 1118 from me, and my FO is at 1740. I'm simply going to find the difference, and that will be 622. So I determined the angle T to 622. I'm going to record it as 620, And since it's in effect, I will send it to the nearest 600. Or nearest 100 rather. So in this case, it'll be 600. All right, now we're firing HE quick at a range of 3750. If I look at my charge versus range, I will find that it's going to be charge 3. So we'll go ahead and open table D, charge 3. And at 3750, we're going to get a deflection of 1107. Don't forget to put your charge in that initial chart. While I'm in table D, I can go ahead and pull my time of flight. Let's go over to column 6, 3750. I get a time of flight of 41.2. I'll then flip to table E. $37.50. Go over to column 8, and I get $20.54. All right, now I can go ahead, fill out that full initial fire command. We have the section following. We're going to fire HE quick. The mortar to fire, since we have an adjusting gun, is going to be number 2. Method of fire, we're doing 1 round in adjust. And we're doing 2 rounds in the fire for effect. Our deflection will bring over as 0932. And our charge is charge 3. We send that data out. 2 gun shoots it. We place 1 HE, circle it, and since we're waiting for a correction, we'll go ahead and just immediately index our OT direction. Go to 1740. Now we're at the OT direction. We can receive the correction, and the FO comes back as right 100, drop 100. So we'll go over here. We'll go right 100, and then we'll drop 100. We'll circle that, label it with the 2 to denote that's the second round. And then we'll bring it back parallel with our MFP. All right, looking at our chart data, we'll pull our deflection. Reading 0923. Now I'll go ahead and grab my range arm. And I'm reading 3600. Mortar to fire doesn't change. Method of fire doesn't change. We're still adjusting, so we just got to bring over our deflection of 0923. At a range of 3600, we're not changing our charge, so we'll leave that blank. And then we just got to pull the corresponding elevation. For 3600, we'll be firing at 1134. We send that data to the guns. 2 gun shoots. We have 2 HE out, and we can circle it. Now we'll be waiting on a correction, so we'll immediately index our OT direction. Before that correction of 1740, and we wait. The FO comes back. He says add 50, fire for effect. So we'll go ahead and make that adjustment. And at this point, since we're in the fire for effect, this will be the last one, and I like to just erase all my plots around it. And then I can give it a hollow cross and label it as Bravo Bravo 1005. Bring that back over my MFP, perfectly parallel, or as best as I can get it. And begin working on the computer's record. I pull my chart deflection of 0913. Grab my range arm. I'm getting 3650. Now, since we're in the fire for effect phase, the mortar to fire does change. We're going with the section. The method of fire, we're now going to 2 rounds. And when it comes to deflection, we have to remember we have that converge on number 2. So we're going to have to give each gun different deflections. So right here, I'll just write out 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I remember to give them different deflections. Now, number 2 gun is the adjusting gun. They're hitting where we want to, so we'll just bring over this chart deflection. 0913. Now we have to figure out how much to change each of these guns to get them to hit where 2 gun is hitting. We'll open up our deflection conversion table. And since we're not using a survey chart, we're gonna go to the final chart range, 3650. We're gonna express it, or round it rather, to the nearest 100, in our case 3700, and that'll give us this column right here, or this row rather. Now we know that with an 81 weapon system, 2 guns hitting here. Now we know that between 1 and 2 gun, there's 40 meters. 2 and 3, also 40 meters. But between 2 and 4, there's 80. So that is what we're going to use to find up here at the top what we need to do. So 40 meters at a range, rounded off at 3700, where those 2 intersect, is going to be 11 mils. Now, we got to remember left add, right subtract. So if we want 1 gun to go left, we have to add 11. If we want 3 gun to go right, we have to add 11. Or subtract 11 rather. Now for 4 gun, if we get them subtracting 11, they'll land where 3 gun was landing. So then we just have to subtract another 11, or in other words, we take this 11, multiply it by 2, and that gives us a shift of -22, all relative to 2 guns deflection. So we'll come up here. 1 gun needs to add 11, so their deflection will be 0924. 3 gun needs to subtract 11, so we're at 0902. And 4 gun needs to subtract 22, which will give us 0800. Correction, 0890. Now at this point, we've given each gun their separate deflections. We know that the charge isn't changing at 3650, so we can just pull the elevation. At 3650, our elevation is 1125. We have 8 rounds going out because 2 rounds out of 4 guns, that's 8. Add it with the 2. We got 10 HE fired for this mission. Circle it. The FO comes back and he says end of mission, target destroyed. And that will be the completion of Team Drill 1. Now, just a couple things to note here. Obviously, I'm using a grease pen here to make the plots more visible. I'm hoping that shows up better on camera. So the accuracy is diminished a little bit. You want these plots to be as small as possible for the best accuracy. When you're using a 0.5 millimeter pencil, it works out great. Also, you're gonna get a different answer every time you do this team drill. So don't be worried if you're 7 off, if you're 2 off, or if you're right on the money. At the end of the day, there's a 10 mil tolerance in deflection for a reason, and the same thing with range, there's a 25 meter tolerance for a reason. You will get a different answer every time you do these team drills. If you don't believe me, go ahead and try it for yourself. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you find it helpful, and we'll see you on the next one.